I kissed his fiancé on the night of their engagement party. I am his best man. Okay, so I've been lurking on this subreddit for a while now, and I finally have something I think is worth sharing. It's a story that's been gnawing away at me for a couple of months, and I think I might finally be ready to confess. I've never told anyone about this, not my friends, not my family, nobody. So, here goes nothing. This all started a few months ago when my best friend Jay got engaged to his girlfriend, Sarah. No, those aren't their real names. Obviously, I have to keep this anonymous. Anyway, I've known Jay since we were kids, and we've always been tight. I mean, we grew up together, went to the same schools, lived together in college, the whole 9 yards. So, when he asked me to be his best man, I was honored and stoked, to say the least. Now, Sarah, she's a great girl. She's smart, funny, and drop-dead gorgeous. I've always gotten along with her, but I never really saw her as anything more than a friend. That is, until the night of their engagement party. I should preface this by saying that I have a bit of a reputation for being a ladies' man. It's not something I'm super proud of, but I've always been comfortable around women and have had my fair share of flings. I was single at the time, so I figured the engagement party would be a great opportunity to meet some new people and maybe spark up a little romance. Little did I know just how much romance was in store. The party was at this swanky rooftop bar downtown, and everyone was dressed to the nines. I picked out this killer suit, and I have to admit, I was feeling pretty damn good about myself. I was mingling, meeting friends of Jay and Sarah, and even started chatting up this cute girl who caught my eye. About halfway through the night, I went to grab another drink and found myself standing next to Sarah at the bar. We started talking, and I realized that in all the time I'd known her, I'd never really had a chance to get to know her one-on-one. We talked about everything, her job, my job, our families, our dreams, our fears. It was one of those conversations that just flowed effortlessly, like we'd known each other our whole lives. And I couldn't help but notice how insanely attractive she was. But then, she said something that completely caught me off guard. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You know, I always thought that if Jay and I hadn't started dating, you and I would have ended up together." I could feel my heart start to pound in my chest, and my mind was racing. This wasn't just some random girl flirting with me. This was my best friend's fiancé. I didn't know what to say, so I just kind of laughed it off and tried to change the subject. But the damage was done. From that point on, I couldn't stop thinking about what she'd said. I started noticing all these little things about her that I'd never paid attention to before. How her eyes sparkled when she laughed, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the curve of her neck when she leaned in to whisper something. As the night wore on, I tried to put some distance between us. I didn't want to be that guy, you know. I didn't want to be the reason Jay and Sarah's relationship got screwed up. But it was like there was a magnet pulling us together. Every time I turned around, there she was, smiling at me, laughing at my jokes, touching my arm as she spoke. I was in way over my head. Finally, the party started winding down, and people began to head home. Jay had to get home and get rested up. He had a big day at work the next day, so he cut out while the rest of the crew cleaned up. After a bit, I made my way outside to grab an Uber, desperate to get out of there before I did something I'd regret. But just as I was about to leave, Sarah came outside to find me. "Hey," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't want you to go just yet." My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear her. I knew I should have just gotten in the car and rode away, but I couldn't. I was drawn to her like a moth to a flame. We ended up talking for hours, just talking and laughing like we'd known each other our entire lives. The chemistry between us was undeniable, and I couldn't believe how easy it was to be with her. It felt like we were two pieces of a puzzle that just fit perfectly together. Half-heartedly, I admit, I tried to stop the conversation and get out of there, but she just kept asking me to stay with her. I didn't have anywhere to be, so it made it all too easy to just stay and keep talking. She finally asked me if I wanted to go with her to the river. She said she goes there some mornings to watch the sunrise, and like an idiot, I said yes. I felt so horrendously guilty being in the car with her. I mean, that one part of me was excited, but the rest of me was in absolute fear and shock. We just kept talking, and she just kept looking over at me intently as I spoke. I was actually getting a little nervous of her driving because she just kept looking at, well, we got to the river and started walking around. Then, as the sun began to rise, we found ourselves sitting on a bench overlooking the river. It was quiet and peaceful, and I couldn't help but think that this was one of the most perfect moments of my life. And then it happened. I don't know who leaned in first, but all of a sudden, our lips were locked in a passionate, electrifying kiss. It felt like fireworks were going off in my head, and I knew I was crossing a line I could never uncross. But in that moment, I didn't care. Suddenly, we broke apart, both of us breathless and wide-eyed. Sarah looked at me with a mix of fear and longing, and I could tell she was just as torn as I was. "We can't do this," she whispered, her voice shaking. "I love Jay, and I don't want to hurt him." I knew she was right, and I hated myself for what I'd done. We both betrayed Jay, and there was no going back from that. "We should go home," I said, my voice barely audible. "We'll pretend this never happened, and we'll never speak of it again." And that's exactly what we did. We sat there in silence while I waited for my Uber. We both just kind of stared at the water. As I got into the car, I couldn't help it and I looked her way one last time. As I turned my head, our eyes locked. She was looking at me as well. I don't remember who broke eye contact first, but that look lingered for so long. Eventually, I ducked my head into the car and off I went. I watched out the window as she began to drive away as well. We both went home and we never talked about that night again. But the thing is, I can't forget it. It's like a splinter in my mind that I can't get rid of. I look at Sarah and Jay together, and I see how happy they are, and I feel like the worst person in the world. I know I should be happy for them, but all I can think about is that one stolen moment on the bench by the river. I've tried dating other people, but it's like a switch has been flipped inside me, and I can't feel anything for anyone else. I'm still the best man at their wedding, and every time I think about standing up there and watching them say their vows, my heart feels like it's being crushed in a vice. I know I should come clean, but I can't bring myself to do it. I can't be the reason their relationship falls apart. I love Jay like a brother, and I know this would destroy him. So here I am, confessing to a bunch of strangers on the internet because I don't know what else to do. I don't know if I'm looking for advice or forgiveness or just someone to tell me I'm not alone in this. But one thing's for sure, I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, and I have no idea how to get out of it. Thanks for listening, Reddit. Yeah, that's not cool at all, but I guess I understand that these things can happen. I definitely think he should have walked away when he was waiting for his Uber and never looked back. What do you think? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. When you subscribe, be sure to click the notification bell. Click here for more Tangled threads.